What it do, Jason Katz? How you doing, man?
What it do, Mr. Estes? Episode 3. We got something here.
Yeah, it's rolling, man. We're moving with it. And I have something planned for you today. So what I wanted to talk to you about, today is an element of business that I think founders and investors are leaving on the table. And this could be CEOs and operators as well. And that's brand sponsorships. Okay. If we're college athletes, we'd call them NIL deals. And there's case study after case study of how this has been effective. And I'll go over a couple of them. But largely, I think founders are too deep in the weeds to realize that their story, their names, their image, their likeness is actually incredibly valuable to other brands, but also as a lever that will create massive revenue in the brand they're working on. So I wanted to take an obvious take and look at Michael Jordan, MJ, because that from our air now, it's a good take because, kids, younger people, Gen Z listening to this, they think about Jordan as a brand first, Okay, let me ask you something. Do you have a B2B or tech brand that want to get your message out to the right people? Like the people that actually care about your product and offering and are willing to make a purchase? Well, let me put you on to Wildcast. Wildcast is a secret weapon for brands that want to advertise on podcasts. And not just any podcast, we're talking about the shows that your audience is actually listening to, that your customers are actually listening to, that your prospects are actually listening to. These are host-read ads that move the needle in your business. It's personal, it's targeted, and honestly, it's one of the best ways to create real connections with your audience. And the best part, Wildcast takes care of it all. They match you with the perfect shows, they manage all of the content, they report, and they manage all of the payment distribution. So all you have to do is sit back and watch the magic happen. If that sounds like something you need, head over to gowildcast.com and apply today. Start turning listeners into loyal customers. Seriously, you'll thank me. Go to gowildcast.com. That is gowildcast.com. Back to the show. They don't think about Michael Jordan. I have to have this annoying conversation with my kids about who's the GOAT in the NBA. It's like, dude, this isn't even a conversation.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan is greatest of all time.
Man. I totally agree with that. Number one, obviously the GOAT, and the thing that a lot of people don't realize or can't even relate to these days is that you didn't have content distribution like you have today. So Michael Jordan was everywhere. That was everywhere. There was no internet. There was television. There was billboards. There was radio. Right. There was public events, and Michael Jordan was the face of all those things. And then there was really no one else. Right. And there was no other media to really promote anyone else. So it was like Michael Jordan, the brand, in, dominating every aspect of media, and there was no competing brand. Right. So the guy was a god.
The guy was an absolute god, and his brand reflects that, so he was smart enough, people around him, that they used his name to build the brand. So Jordan now is its own entity within Nike, but it completely exists independently. Now, Nike takes a big risk and a big gamble in 1984. They took a look at this kid, Michael Jordan, like, wow, I think he's got what it takes. We're going to go all in. Now that panned out pretty well. It could have gone a different way. And there's plenty of shoe deals that have gone a different way, but it didn't, So now they start to develop Jordan as a brand, So if we're thinking about that for ourselves, particularly investors and founders, we're always building a brand aside from us. So if you're, if you look at Wozniak and the Apple people, they build Apple. You know what I'm saying? It's so funny. I can't remember the founder of Apple's name.
What? Not Tim Cook, Steve Jobs.
Yeah, I got hung up on Tim Cook too. Steve freaking Jobs. Yeah, he didn't call that computer Steve Jobs, although it might have been a better play. Now, of course, that worked out well for Apple as well. But, his career had some ups and downs. So if we're looking at Jordan, they make the great example to create the brand around Jordan. First couple of years, they got a winner. Okay, so now he has other sponsorships pouring in. You got Gatorade, you got McDonald's, you got Coca-Cola, you got Chevy, you've got Wheaties, So all of these people are now going to use his name, image, and likeness to promote their brand. But every time they even show Jordan, That's a plug for Nike. That's a plug for his own personal brand. Of course, he's now a billion-dollar entity. So now that's an obvious case. And also, he's a professional athlete. So I think the other time, founders and investors, we start looking at ourselves, we're saying, oh, okay, well, they're a musician, they're an artist, they're an athlete, they're this other thing. But I tell you what, in 2025, I'm super bullish on business entertainment. I think that like founder stories and leaders in business are going to be kind of the next wave, and I think we see this in election results. I think we see this in a lot of places where people are starting to say, like, you know what, maybe who we should listen to are people that have had stunning success in business. And we can take a look all around. I know 1,000 guys that have made $1 million, now not personally necessarily, but also personally, but have generated that in business. So these kind of people, it's like, well, they're tried and true. They've got the blood, sweat, and tears. They've actually done something. They don't just look great in yoga pants. It's some of them do. I know you do.
Well, I think I mean, I look amazing in yoga pants. I think what, in part you're describing the knowledge economy, because the idea of yeah, would you call it founder entertainment?
Yeah,
I mean,
business
I assume
entertainment.
you're suggesting that, that they're producing their own media and people are listening and consuming it kind of as a form of entertainment, similar to like a podcast and founders talking on a podcast, right? But
100%.
but they're yeah. So in that, I think the reason why people are more and more intrigued by that type of entertainment, as you call it, is because number one, it's way more accessible, right? There's so many more avenues that are so more personal where you could directly go into the brain of these people and listen to what they have to say. Whereas in the past, again, to the point of media accessibility, was pretty limited with where you could receive this type of messaging. And there's only so many TV stations and there's only so many newspapers, and you only have so much time to read those media. Whereas now there's infinite avenues and infinite ways to get in front of what those people are saying, so that you can listen and choose. And then the second thing is, the whole idea of democratizing knowledge and then using knowledge to monetize your own version of your own knowledge is just continuing to grow. So, the personal brand concept and the knowledge economy and course creation. I mean, I have some courses that I'm standing up on my site, and my wife was like, "Well, it feels like it's pretty saturated, and you do a little homework." And you know, it's easy to feel that way because you're getting hit with course content and marketing everywhere you go. But when you look at the market as a whole, it's projected to increase like 5x more between now and 2030, right? So like this course economy, knowledge economy is going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And I do think that the saturation effect, I would call it, where you feel like it's oversaturated, is part and parcel just to the fact that anyone at any point in time can go out into the ethernet or ether webs of social and YouTube and directly say what they want to say directly to that person at the right point in time where they're ready to hear that message. So it feels like these people are everywhere, right? Because in a way, in your universe, they are, right? So it feels like you're walking down the street and you're looking up at the signs at the sign on the store, and it says course creator, and then you go to the next one, it says course creator, and then you go to the next one, it says course creator, right? It's like it feels like, oh, there's no more room on this block, right? But what we forget is that there's, I don't know, 9 billion or 8 billion people in the world, right? And this idea of being able to reach out into that interconnected web of humans and give them something that they want, is still kind of in its early stage. I wouldn't say infancy, right? But it's still in its early stage where everyone can go out and find exactly who wants to hear their messaging, exactly when, and that means there's still a ton of opportunity for people like course creators and knowledge transfer, et cetera.
You bet. And think about it with courses in particular. You have a stellar course that gets a lot of traction, and you're doing a course about like food trucks, you know. Now, once you've built all that trust, think about the relationship you have with somebody who's walking you through how to build your food truck. So
Mhm.
now if you're in a position where you want to market to those people, you go find that business owner. Business owners CEOs, founders, and investors will be tapped, and they're going to get the sponsorship deals. And I think it's personally more American. It's more democratic because it's based in merit. So you can look at this guy. He's like, hey, man, I built myself up from nothing. And now I got a $10 million company and I represent American Express. And you're like, God dang, heck yeah, that guy did it. And that dude is uglier than me. And look at him. He's out there swinging. It drives me absolutely crazy when I see these commercials on network television where you have just absolute specimens of human beauty and they're like playing small business owners. Chase is notorious for these kind of commercials.
Right.
I think as we move forward, there's a lot of opportunity. In fact, I'm invested in it, of finding creators that are business owners and have success in business and getting them sponsorships. There's another great example of this, which I think is Shark Tank. The whole premise of the show is you have these people scrappy, built themselves up, and now they're in a position to invest in other companies, and you see this trajectory. This is the American trajectory. You work for somebody, trading time for money, then you're self-employed, then you own a business, then you invest in businesses. Like this is how our economy works. And so that's a great example of it. And if you look at my favorite shark, I don't know who you like. I love Cubes for sure. And I love Mr. Wonderful, but I'm a Barbara Corcoran kind of guy. I love Barbara. I mean, she's exquisite to me.
That's a
And if you
good
look at
question.
her trajectory,
I don't know who my favorite is. I like her though. Yeah, she's solid.
solid.
I'm not a Cubes guy.
Not a Cubes guy?
Nah, he's all right. I mean, I think he kind of soured me on the whole politics stuff.
Oh, we can't let the politics interfere with our appreciation of the sharkiness.
No, I mean that's fair. I mean, on Shark Tank, I think he's pretty solid.
Yeah. Barbara's great. So you see this. She built out a real estate empire in New York City over 20 or 30-year career. You think about personal branding. You think about Barbara, and she's like a matriarch. She always looks great, just put together. But also, she has this brassy edge to her that can only be honed from like true experience. I mean, she had this great quote where she was talking about somebody asked her about like, hey, man, some of the people are really kind of going through it emotionally at my work, and they're kind of bringing this kind of like morose, sad energy to work. She's like, fire them all. We don't have time for the saddies. It's just like,
I like it.
damn,
I like
damn.
it.
Yeah. So I appreciate her attitude. I like her brand, and I'm not alone. I just pulled a list of sponsorships that she has personally. Again, like she's able to take the heat and all of the distribution from television and all these other channels and bring them into her business interests. In fact, all of the sharks use their name to co-sign, and that's truly the value. Sure, I can spend 200,000 for 1% equity in your company, but really these guys should do anything they possibly can to get that representation because the sponsorship of those guys is golden. So
For
Barbara's
sure.
represented by, or is sponsored by rather, Paycom, AT&T, Aflac, Amazon, Amex, Canon, eCommission, Klaviyo, Microsoft, On Deck, Toyota, UPS, The Wall Street Journal, and Zebit.
Great
She's got
portfolio.
she's got a net worth of at least 100 million, and I think that research is probably a bit off. I bet you she's got 100 million in the bank, and the rest of it she's just stacking. It was
Sure.
it was
Yeah, no
great.
doubt.
I talked to a guy today that actually did a deal with Barbara on Shark Tank, and it was kind of a highlight of the year because I was able to give him a message to relay to Barbara. I was just like, hey, let her know that Ryan in Denver loves her. Just let her know. So I bet she heard that information, probably slept a little better that night.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if people don't respond to Ryan in Denver, then they're clearly out of the loop.
Yeah.
Is that
So
are you gonna have some sponsorships under that one?
go get a sponsorship.
Yeah, or at least some shirts that say Ryan in Denver. I'd grab one of those.
Dude, that would be good merch. Ryan in Denver loves you with a heart
I mean,
emoji.
maybe we're onto something.
So there's a little bit of uh intent behind talking about this right now in this direction, and largely because my company Wildcast does sponsorship deals for podcasting, and we've had great success in that. But in talking to hundreds of podcasters, you see that they built this podcast. So we got What It Do. We're putting What It Do out into the world. But what you can do, and they have representation of varying success. We're able to kind of pull talent every once in a while. But what we can do is actually just peel off the hosts. So okay, cool, you got What It Do, but actually we're going to sign Jason Katz to an NIL deal and go shop sponsors. And in 2025, I'm all in getting sponsorships for business leaders. So this is a bulletin I'm putting out to the world that, you're a founder, you're an investor, you're a CEO, you want to add additional top of line revenue to your company, great, but also consider the magnitude of what can happen when you get a sponsorship. Just imagine what happens when Gatorade is using Michael Jordan to sell Gatorade, and Michael Jordan is laughing all the way to the bank because he's promoting his own separate brand as
Sure.
well.
No, it's a compounding effect for sure.
Yeah. So I'm all in on it. Founders, investors, CEOs, it's time to level up the game and get sponsorships in 2025. That's it
Like
for
it,
me,
man.
sir. Yeah. And let's go over the news, man. I know you pulled a couple of hot takes out, and I want to go over these
All right.
and
I
see
mean,
what
let's
you
hit
got.
it. Not to
Let's
get
do it.
overly political, but I am on the X, and I am passionate about what's going on out there, and I'm very opinionated. So be forewarned.
Let's go. Let's see what you got.
What do we got?
If you're someone who's always trying to level up, whether it's your health, your career, or just life in general, you have to check out the Lift newsletter. This is my personal newsletter where I share stories, insights, and practical tips that are all about creating a lift in your life. We're talking about how to crush it in business, how to stay sharp mentally and physically, and find a little balance along the way. Every edition is packed with quick reads, actionable advice, and a little humor along the way. It's all designed to give you value up front and never waste your time. So head over to my website, it's ryanestes.info, click the newsletter, and subscribe today. It's free, it's fun, and who knows, maybe this is the lift you've been looking for. ryanestes.info. Now let's get back to the podcast. Oh, am I teeing 'em up? I'm not saying these hot takes. These
Yeah,
are your hot takes.
yeah, bro. All right.
Sorry, I got to bring them up. No, but it is interesting. I mean, I never shy away from political discussions, but I can tell you're definitely radicalized right now. You got it going. All right,
I
so let me
mean,
tee you up.
really
I got it
though.
here. You've
Okay,
got
tee it up and we can debate. If I'm radicalized, let's go for it. Because I don't have it on the screen. So tell me what I sent you.
the first one is Wisconsin shooter.
Okay. All right. So my theory on this is that something I've been saying, and by the way, like extremely sad, right? Like devastating what happens, and these shootings continue to happen, and um, I ask myself why these things happen, and for me, the Democrats obviously go right to gun control, right? That's the very popular narrative, but I mean, we're talking about the end of a chain of symptoms when we focus on gun control, right? So
Yeah.
you have to go back and you have to really look at like what's really going on here. I mean, if you take away the guns, let's just assume tomorrow that there were no more guns, then you're just going to have a very unhappy, sad, you know, m- um, person that's dealing with severe mental challenges without a gun, right? So like, what does that do for us as a society? Well, I mean, maybe it limits some gun deaths, but is it really hitting the root of the problem? And um, I think what we have, the discussion that we need to have is really around mental illness, and I don't say that in a derogatory way. I think if you probably profile all these school shooters, I'm sure there's a common thread of broken home, right? Mental illness challenges, depression, anxiety, those types of things. And to me, that's an epidemic. And when I ask myself why that's happening, I have to go further up the chain and try to get to the source of what's really going on, because to me, that's also a symptom. And where I land is that I think, there's a lot of, broken homes. I don't know the divorce rate these days, 50, 60% or something like that, right? I don't know what it was 60, 70 years ago, but it definitely wasn't that high. And what I see in my lifetime even is just a deterioration of American values. And I think that that deterioration of values, whether they are religious values or some other core set of family values, right? Whatever you believe in, uh, yeah, I think to have a set of values to guide kind of light and dark or good and evil is a good thing, right? I don't think that's a bad thing. But somewhere along the way, we've bastardized and demonized any sort of institution that represents something of values, right? Religion totally demonized, um, right? And there's many other examples, but uh, because of this, in my opinion, we've we've taken values out of the system, we've demonized values, and what you end up with is a lot of people acting on things like passion and emotion, right? Because they don't have a North Star to lean into, right? They don't have a meditation to lean into to bring them around. And, I've learned through my own mental health struggles that, quality mental health and good frame of mind and healthy gratitude practice and viewing the world positively and feeling good about yourself is something that has to be done intentionally. Like, those aren't things that just happen. Like, you have to put yourself in a um, environment where those types of things become repetitious. And if they're not, then you're going to end up being in an environment where you're subject to everything that's happening around you. And right now, that's just pain, anger, and human suffering. So, you know, I think the infrastructure to create the things around gratitude and love and positivity lives within a system of values, like I said, whether it's religion or something else. And I do think that that has greatly deteriorated, which in turn has greatly deteriorated the quality of the family unit, which in turn I think is producing a lot of very, very depressed, aimless teenagers who are trying to find their place in society and trying to be heard, right? Because at the end of the day, like, we're social beings and we really just want to be heard and valued. I mean, this is a good, I think, even in the workplace, lesson that, when you look at what employees want, like, I think the immediate reaction is, well, they want to get paid more, they want money, but that's not actually what makes employees happy. What makes employees happy is feeling valued and being understood and knowing that they have a place in the system, right?
Mhm.
And I think the same thing is said for kids and teenagers at home, is that they want to know that they have a place, they want to be understood, they want to be heard. Um, and I just think all of that's missing. And you're ending up with just people who are lost and fighting for someone to recognize them, anyone, and they end up going down rabbit holes, right, in the internet. And in lieu of having positive reinforcement and a value-based system that encourages positive thought patterns, you end up with the opposite, which is a very negative reinforcement mechanism, right? Through, like, being online and diving into your pain and, finding other people that are in pain and, right, anger, repetition, and anger and repetition and anger and repetition. And it just gets cemented in your brain and you just become so resentful and hateful that you go out and you do something as terrible as shoot up a school.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like they say, you hurt people, and how do you find these folks before it's too late and begin them on a healing journey? It's really hard, but I think if you zoom out in the course of time, I think we've done a really good job at doing that. And the institutions that were successful in the past, if we're talking about religions and things like that, have been replaced, probably by economy, money, and time. And those have also worked, I think, pretty well. The tough thing is that, you turn on TV and anywhere in the world, there's going to be some kind of it bleeds, it leads kind of thing. But if you look statistically, it's like violent crime especially, is way down. War worldwide is way down. I love reading about the dusty old West, in the 19th century. You have the Mexican American War, you have the Indian Wars, you have the Civil War. Dude, it was crazy. And then you'll see stuff like they'll find some unfrozen caveman that slipped into a ravine 8,000 years ago, and they pull him out, and you're like, "Wow, look at you can still see his hair and stuff." And then they're like, "Oh, and it looks like somebody smashed him in the head with a boulder and threw him down the ravine." Like human instinct, humans are so dangerous. I mean,
Sure.
this is
Yeah.
something that came to me later in life, but having a daughter, having a wife, being around women, they say that men, what they're afraid of most is like being embarrassed by a woman. That's their biggest fear. And women are afraid of being murdered by men. It's like the order of
I mean, dude,
magnitude.
look,
I mean,
humans are dangerous, and all the more reason why we need these institutions and systems. Marriage is a sacred institution. Religion is not a bad thing. There's nuance in every study of religion and every version of that study in religion. I mean, there's all sorts of ranges of Catholicism and Christianity and Muslim and Jewish. I mean, right? So, just the idea though that religion is bad or these institutions are bad or marriage is bad, and there's a lot of that I think is really damaging. Hey, when you say we've done well, you mean over hundreds of years, you're saying there's less war, there's less crime, right? So,
humans, yeah.
yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I think that like we are generation after generation improving, and I do think that that is the goal of every, father and mother is to have a generation that's more prosperous and happier than they are,
Mhm.
right? But it does feel like we're seeing some lashing out behavior, like these school shootings, which indicates to me that like that progress could be at risk. Like
Mm,
it's just an early warning sign, right? And maybe it's not global, but when I look at kind of what was happening in our country and what is still happening, and I zoom out and I start to wonder, like, are we at a point in time where we might be a threat of going backwards?
mm. Interesting. The gun control issue is tough because there's so many facets, to like gun violence. You know, there's kind of the Luigi guy, right? Where you have vigilante justice. This isn't mental health. This dude is of sane
For sure,
mind, and he's like, "No, that guy, I'm gonna go get him." It's an act of warfare, essentially. But then you have school shootings that are or even some school shootings too, they'll go after the perpetrators that tortured them. Others, people will just wander into an area and just open fire on everybody, and those ones are particularly troubling because they're not necessarily like it's not a war, rather, it's a judgment of all humanity, and they're
hmm
saying, "We've gone back so far for what's happened to me that all humans have to go." And, it's that that kind of like virus is so dangerous because we're moving towards a time where, one individual contributor could create a new coronavirus. They could
for
create some
sure.
kind of dirty weapon. So
Sneak a
you could
nuke into
have,
the U.S.
yeah, you have the power. One person may have the power to do unbelievable damage. And if they fall under the spell or whatever that demon that's whispering in their ear that like it's time for humans to go, you know, we're in trouble. I mean, what we're really hoping at is like Vladimir Putin, is like wants to make sure that his people are taken care of. His love for Russia helps me sleep at night because he's one of these guys. One guy holds the fate of the entire world in his hands.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, no doubt.
dude, great take. I love this one. Can we move on?
Yeah, let's move on. What do we got? Drones?
All right. Yeah, drones, man. That's
I
what I
mean, we
wanted
can
to
make
get to.
drone. We can make drones quick. I mean, just the whole thing is fucking weird. Like, like it's just so like really like no one knows anything. Just no one, nobody, no one in the
Yeah.
government knows anything. No one locally knows anything. It's just totally strange, right? All these
Also
drones that are the
totally a
size of cars.
lie. It's a
It's
total
just
lie.
so yeah, I mean, someone's definitely lying, right? I mean, the 3 scenarios that I came up with was there's the nuclear search for nuclear material and, right, maybe that's a thing. God forbid, I really hope it's not a thing. I mean, I live in Philadelphia, and that's the area that all this is going on, so, yeah, I've had a couple, wake up in the middle of the night, fears that there's going to be a giant nuclear explosion outside my house, and that's not comforting. But I don't think that's what it is. The second theory that a buddy floated past me was that SpaceX or some other company is testing airways for travel, which is kind of interesting. And then the third one was government experiment to test reaction of the mass populace to an event like this, which to me is totally reasonable. Could be that. And I guess the
Yeah.
fourth scenario is like there's just some underground group of people on the internet, because this apparently has happened to a lesser degree repeatedly over the last 4 or 5 years around this exact period of time in this area. So the theory there is just there's just some underground group of people on the internet that decided to do this every year, right? And they're doing it. Right now, I don't know a lot about like the actual drones themselves, and it's just so hard because we're in this age where like you have no idea what's real. So like you hear things like, oh, the batteries are lasting 6 and 7 hours, or they're using other technology that just no one ever thought existed, for drones or whatever it is. And if that's the case, well then, it makes me think that like there's a government involvement going on, but we don't even know if that's true. So the reality is like, who the fuck knows? Nobody knows. It's weird.
Yeah. Option 5, it could just be Elon trolling. If someone was gonna do it,
Totally.
he'd do it,
Totally.
But, when I see all these, like, the government officials being like, "Okay, we have no idea what it is, but we know it's not a big deal. Any other questions?" Like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah, he's like, "Huh, wait, take it wind that back for me a little bit." How do you
Yeah,
know that
I
it's
don't
not a big deal if you don't know what it is, you know?
exactly, they're like, "I don't know why, but we just know it's not foreign actors and, it's nothing nefarious, but we have no idea what it is, but we know it's not that, so everything's cool. Next question." "Wha
So
what?"
weird, dude. So
Dude,
weird.
so so weird. Alright, here we
Alright,
got one
third
of
one, let's go.
thir
We're rolling on time. What do we got? Remind me what the third one was?
pork fat government bill exposes the do nothing, read nothing culture of Congress.
I'll sum this up real quick. I mean, I guess I'm just happy that there's an outlet now for people to realize how the government works and how stupidly inefficient it is, and how politicians just stuff random shit into bills that no one knows are even on the table, and they push it through, and they do sneaky things like give people 24 hours to read a 1,500-page bill. Right. I think with tools like AI that can now read these things and create executive summaries of these things, I think that's going to be a huge mechanism to get this information out soon, like immediately. Right. I mean, AI can scan those pages and create a summary of what's in that bill in 20 minutes or less. Right. And I think that's going to be really advantageous. And I just think we're in this period of time, man, where like you're going to see big company administrations, the administrative state, and a lot of old school politicians that have been doing things this way for a very, very, very long time. And now they're going to have to face accountability because the way that they behave and the way that they operate is now going to be in public light. And
Mhm.
like who wants to be held accountable, right? After building wealth and living this way for 20, 30, 40 years and having all this power. And in my opinion, it's coming. And I think that's going to be really interesting to watch. And I, for one, am very grateful that there's going to be accountability and transparency. So, I'm happy that the bill got squashed, and, we'll figure it out. And this is going to be what this transition looks like.